The sun was dipping low, painting the suburban sprawl in hues of orange and regret. I just clocked out after a 12-hour shift as Assistant Commissioner for Public Safety, my badge heavy in my pocket, my patience thinner than the cheap coffee in the precinct break room. All I wanted was a cold beer and to see my daughter Ava's smile, her real one, not the brave face she puts on when her epilepsy's acting up. But as I turned onto our street, what I saw made my blood turn to napalm. There, at the neighborhood's fancy wrought iron gate, was Mrs. Holloway, HOA president, self-appointed queen of clipboard tyranny, and the kind of woman who'd argue with a brick wall about its shade of red. Her designer heels clicked like a countdown to chaos as she loomed over Ava, my 14-year-old, pinning her against the gate like a bug on a windshield. Ava's service dog, Beacon, was barking his heart out, his DOJ-registered vest gleaming under the streetlight, but Holloway wasn't having it. "No dogs in common areas," she screeched, jabbing a manicured finger into Ava's chest. Ava, trembling, tried to explain, "Beacon's not a pet, he's her lifeline," but Holloway leaned in harder, trapping my girl and her dog outside their own damn home. A crowd of neighbors stood around, some shifting uncomfortably, most just gawking like this was reality TV. Ava's face was streaked with tears, her hands shaking as Beacon whined, and I felt a rage I hadn't known since that time a rookie tried to borrow my parking spot. I slammed my car door, the sound cutting through Holloway's tirade like a gunshot. Every head turned. Holloway's eyes narrowed, probably thinking she'd add me to her list of HOA violations. I stepped forward, my boots heavy on the asphalt. "Assistant Commissioner Riley, Metropolitan Police Department," I said, flipping open my badge. The crowd gasped like they'd just seen a plot twist in a Scorsese flick. Holloway's smug grin vanished faster than her husband's spine at last year's block party. "I just watched you assault my disabled daughter," I said, voice low, the kind I use when I want someone to know they've already lost. "Picture this, your kid, scared and cornered by a grown woman who thinks rules are her personal scepter. What would you do? Would you throw hands? Call the cops? Or just stand there like half these neighbors, clutching their pearls and their silence? Hit the comments, tell me how you deal with a Karen who thinks she's judge, jury, and executioner. Because this story's just getting started, and Holloway's about to learn she picked the wrong fight." The living room was quiet, save for Beacon's soft breathing as he rested his head in Ava's lap. She sat curled on the couch, her eyes distant, fingers tracing the edges of his service vest like it was a shield. The red mark on her shoulder, where Holloway's body had pinned her to the gate, glared under the lamplight. I knelt beside her, keeping my voice steady. "You did nothing wrong, kiddo," I said. She nodded, but the tremble in her lip told me she wasn't convinced. Rage simmered in my chest, but I shoved it down. Holloway thought she could bully my daughter and stroll away like she was untouchable. She didn't know I'd been building a case against her for years. Mrs. Patel, our neighbor with a knack for showing up with tea and quiet wisdom, slipped through the front door. "For Ava," she said, handing over a steaming mug. Her eyes lingered on Ava's shoulder, and her jaw tightened. "That woman's gone too far," she muttered. I thanked her, my mind already shifting to the next move. Holloway's reign of clipboard terror was about to crash into a wall called evidence. I grabbed my phone and snapped photos of Ava's injury, clear, time-stamped, undeniable. Next, I checked Beacon's vest, its DOJ registration number crisp and official, a silent rebuke to Holloway's dangerous animal nonsense. I pulled a folder from my desk, thick with HOA letters Holloway had sent over the years, complaints about Beacon's presence, demands for proof of Ava's disability, threats of fines for noncompliance. Each one was a nail in Holloway's coffin, her own words documenting a pattern of harassment. Then came the goldmine. Mr. Guzman, the guy across the street who's always tinkering with his vintage Mustang, had been at the gate. He'd recorded the whole thing on his phone, Holloway's tirade, Ava's tears, Beacon's desperate barks. He sent me the video, and I watched it once, my knuckles whitening around my phone. Holloway's voice, shrill and unhinged, echoed through the footage. "You don't belong here if you can't follow rules." Ava's quiet pleas, explaining Beacon's role, were drowned out by Holloway's finger-jabbing fury. The video was a prosecutor's dream. I sat at the kitchen table, typing up a police report with the precision of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. Assault on a minor. ADA violations. Harassment. Every detail was locked in: names, times, witnesses. I attached the video, photos, and scanned copies of Holloway's letters. Then I fired off an email to the HOA board, subject line, "Emergency meeting request." The message was short but sharp: "Mrs. Holloway assaulted my disabled daughter today. Evidence attached. I expect immediate action." I hit send, picturing the board's collective panic when they opened the file. Ava was sipping her tea now, a little color back in her face. "What happens next, Dad?" she asked, her voice small but steady. I leaned back, forcing a smile. "We show them who they're messing with," I said. She gave a tiny nod, and Beacon thumped his tail. That was enough for now. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Mrs. Patel had spread the word, and a few neighbors texted their support, short messages, cautious but kind. "We saw what happened," one read. "We're with you." Others stayed silent, probably scared of Holloway's wrath. She wasn't done, either. In the HOA's online group, she posted a rant: "Dangerous animals threaten our community's safety. We must enforce rules." No mention of pinning a kid to a gate, of course. Just pure, Karen-grade deflection. I printed out her post, adding it to the folder. Every move she made was another shovel digging her own grave. Guzman stopped by with a USB drive, backup of the video, just in case. "Holloway's been hassling folks for years," he said, scratching his beard. "About time someone stood up." I thanked him, already planning the board meeting. Holloway thought she could spin this, charm her way out like she always did. She didn't know I was coming with a sledgehammer. That afternoon, I sat with Ava, going over her statement. She didn't want to talk much, but she described the incident in her own words: clear, honest, heartbreaking. I typed it up, had her read it, and she signed it. Mrs. Patel dropped off a written statement too, her neat handwriting detailing Holloway's aggression and Ava's distress. 2 witnesses, 1 video, a stack of letters, and a registered service dog. Holloway's smugness at the gate was about to cost her everything. I called the precinct to follow up on the report. The officer on duty, a guy I'd trained back in the day, promised to push it up the chain. "This one's airtight, Riley," he said. "Dave's gonna love it." I hung up, feeling the first flicker of satisfaction. Holloway had spent years weaponizing rules to control this neighborhood, fining people for unapproved mailboxes, harassing families over kids' chalk drawings. Now she'd crossed a line, and I had her dead to rights. Ava was asleep on the couch now, Beacon sprawled across her legs. I stood at the window, watching the street where Holloway's house sat, her perfect lawn a monument to her need for control. She thought she'd won at the gate, thought she'd scared Ava into submission. She didn't know I'd been watching her for years, noting every overreach, every threat. This wasn't just about Ava, it was about every neighbor she'd bullied, every kid she'd intimidated, every rule she'd twisted to feed her ego. The HOA board replied to my email, scheduling the emergency meeting for tomorrow night. Good. I'd walk into that clubhouse with Ava, Beacon, and enough evidence to bury Holloway's reputation. Let her try to talk her way out of a video showing her assaulting a disabled kid. Let her explain why she thought she could violate federal law and get away with it. The neighborhood was about to see her for what she was, a petty tyrant who'd finally picked the wrong fight. I turned back to Ava, her face peaceful in sleep. This wasn't over, but it was starting to feel like justice. Holloway wanted a war. She'd get one. And I'd make sure she remembered the day she pinned my daughter to a gate. The HOA clubhouse smelled of stale coffee and desperation, its fluorescent lights buzzing like a trapped wasp. The room was packed, neighbors shoulder to shoulder, some clutching water bottles, others whispering like they were at a funeral. Holloway sat at the front, her clipboard a scepter, her smile as fake as her highlights. She thought she'd control this circus like she always did. She didn't see me walk in with Ava, Beacon at her side, his service vest gleaming. In my hand was a flash drive, a folder bulging with evidence, and the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're about to end someone's reign. Ava squeezed my arm, her eyes scanning the crowd. I gave her a nod, "You've got this," and she straightened, Beacon mirroring her resolve. The board president, Mr. Wilson, a wiry guy with a comb-over and a habit of avoiding conflict, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address a serious incident," he said, glancing nervously at Holloway. She leaned back, arms crossed, ready to spin her tale of dangerous animals and rule-breaking teens. I stepped forward, my boots echoing on the linoleum. "Assistant Commissioner Riley," I said, voice cutting through the murmurs. "I'm here about Mrs. Holloway's assault on my daughter, Ava, and her service dog, Beacon." The room went still. Holloway's smirk faltered, just for a second. I plugged the flash drive into the projector and set my folder on the table, photos, statements, HOA letters, all in order. Let's walk through the facts. I started with Ava's epilepsy, her need for Beacon to alert her to seizures. "He's not a pet," I said, pointing to his DOJ-registered vest. "He's a service animal, protected under the ADA." I pulled up the first slide, a scanned copy of Holloway's letter from last year, demanding proof of Ava's disability. "This is part of a pattern," I said. "Mrs. Holloway has targeted Ava for years, ignoring federal law." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Holloway shifted, her pen tapping like a guilty heartbeat. Next, I showed the photos of Ava's shoulder, the red mark stark against her skin. "This is from Mrs. Holloway pinning Ava to the gate 2 days ago." A few neighbors gasped, others leaned forward. Then came the video. I hit play, and Guzman's footage filled the screen, Holloway's shrill voice, Ava's trembling pleas, Beacon's frantic barks. The crowd watched her jab Ava's chest, block her path, and sneer about rules. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Holloway's face was the color of skim milk. "This isn't just bullying," I said, turning to the board. "It's assault on a minor, an ADA violation, and harassment. The police report's filed. The DA's reviewing it. You've got a choice, act now or face a lawsuit and a full investigation." I laid out the folder's contents, Mrs. Patel's statement, Guzman's video, years of Holloway's letters. "This isn't one mistake. It's a campaign." Wilson cleared his throat, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mrs. Holloway, do you have a response?" She stood, clutching her clipboard like a life raft. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, voice syrupy. "I was enforcing community standards. That dog's a safety risk, and I was protecting our neighborhood." A few heads nodded, her loyalists, the ones scared of her fines. But most of the room wasn't buying it. "Protecting?" I said, holding up a letter from her demanding Ava register Beacon with the HOA, an illegal request. "You've been breaking the law for years, and you assaulted a child for it." I turned to the crowd. "How many of you have dealt with her threats? Her fines for nothing? Speak up." For a moment, silence. Then Mrs. Patel stood. "She fined me for my grandson's wheelchair ramp," she said. "Called it unsightly." Guzman was next. She threatened to tow my car for parking wrong during a family party. One by one, neighbors shared their stories, petty citations, intimidation, power trips. The dam broke. Wilson's comb-over was sweating now. "We'll need to review," he started, but I cut him off. "Review fast. Assault carries jail time. ADA violations bring federal penalties. And I've got a lawyer ready to file by Monday." I looked at Holloway, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. "You're done calling the shots. Ava spoke up, her voice soft but clear. "I just want Beacon and I to be safe." Beacon sat tall beside her, and the room melted. A guy in the back, big dude, probably a mechanic, clapped. Others joined. Holloway sank into her chair, her clipboard useless. Wilson huddled with the board, their whispers frantic. After 10 minutes, he stood. "We're suspending Mrs. Holloway from her position, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. We'll also implement mandatory disability rights training for all board members." The crowd erupted, some cheers, some grumbles, but the tide had turned. Holloway grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels clicking like a retreating army. As we left, neighbors approached Ava, offering apologies, fist bumps to Beacon. Mrs. Patel hugged her, whispering something that made Ava smile. Outside, the night air was cool, the gate in the distance now just a gate, not a battlefield. Ava looked at me. "Did we win, Dad?" I ruffled her hair. "Not yet, kiddo. But we're getting there." Holloway thought she could bully her way through this, charm the board like she always had. She didn't expect a room full of evidence, a crowd ready to speak, and a father who'd spent years waiting for her to slip. The DA was next, and I had a feeling Holloway's clipboard wouldn't help her in court. For now, I walked Ava home, Beacon trotting beside us, the neighborhood feeling a little less like her kingdom and a little more like ours. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper, its high ceiling amplifying every cough and shuffle. I sat in the witness box, my badge in my pocket, my eyes on Holloway across the room. 2 weeks after the board meeting, she stood before the judge, her designer heels swapped for sensible flats, her clipboard nowhere in sight. She thought she could talk her way out of this, charm the DA, spin her story of community safety. She didn't expect a courtroom packed with neighbors, Guzman's video on repeat, and a DA who'd taken one look at the evidence and smelled blood. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense stare, called the case. The DA laid it out like a surgeon: assault on a minor, ADA violations, harassment. She played the video, and the room watched Holloway pin Ava to the gate, her voice shrill, Ava's face crumpling. Mrs. Patel's statement followed, then Guzman's, both describing Holloway's aggression in crisp detail. My testimony was last. I kept it simple: Ava's epilepsy, Beacon's role, Holloway's years of harassment, the red mark on Ava's shoulder. I handed over the folder, HOA letters, photos, her own words condemning her. Holloway's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. "I've seen enough," she said. Holloway took the stand, her voice quivering with rehearsed remorse. "I was just enforcing rules," she said. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The DA wasn't buying it. "You targeted a disabled child," she said, holding up a letter where Holloway demanded Ava prove her disability. "You violated federal law and assaulted her." "That's not a misunderstanding." The judge's pen scratched notes, her face unreadable. The neighbors in the gallery leaned forward, some nodding, others glaring at Holloway. Mrs. Patel sat with Ava, who'd insisted on coming. Beacon lay at her feet, his presence a quiet rebuke to Holloway's dangerous animal lie. I caught Ava's eye and gave her a nod. She sat taller, her hand steady. This was her fight too. The judge delivered the verdict like a hammer. "Mrs. Holloway, your actions were deliberate and harmful," she said. "You assaulted a minor, violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, and engaged in a pattern of harassment. The penalties came fast: a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at a disability advocacy center, and a year of probation." She was ordered to pay for Ava's therapy sessions, 6 months of counseling to undo the trauma of that day at the gate. A restraining order barred Holloway from coming within 100 feet of Ava or Beacon. The courtroom buzzed, a mix of satisfaction and shock. Holloway's face crumpled, her lawyer whispering frantically. She'd expected a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine she could pay off with her HOA slush fund. Instead, she was a convicted bully, her name tied to a case the local paper was already calling a landmark for disability rights. As the gavel fell, neighbors clapped, not a roar, but a steady, deliberate sound. Holloway hurried out, head down, no longer the queen of anything. Back home, the HOA board didn't waste time. They'd finalized Holloway's removal the day after the board meeting, stripping her of her title and her power. Wilson, still sweating under his comb-over, announced new accessibility guidelines, clear rules protecting service animals, mandatory ADA training, and a hotline for harassment complaints. The board wasn't perfect, but they'd learned the cost of ignoring Holloway's reign. Her name was scrubbed from the HOA website, her legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. The neighborhood shifted. The local paper ran a front-page story, complete with a photo of Ava and Beacon at the gate. "Justice for Ava, HOA president faces consequences," the headline read. Neighbors who'd stayed silent started showing up. Mrs. Guzman dropped off a batch of tamales, her husband grumbling about Holloway's damn fines. A kid from down the street brought Ava a hand-drawn card of Beacon, tail wagging like a superhero's cape. Even the mechanic from the board meeting stopped by, offering to fix my car's squeaky brakes for free. "Holloway messed with the wrong guy," he said, grinning. Ava was quieter, still processing. The therapy helped, giving her a space to unpack the fear and anger from that day. She'd started walking Beacon again, her steps cautious but growing bolder. The gate, once a symbol of Holloway's control, was just a gate now. I watched her from the porch one evening, Beacon trotting beside her, and felt a weight lift. We'd fought for her, and we'd won. The DA called me after the hearing, her voice brisk but warm. "Solid case, Riley," she said. "This sets a precedent." I thanked her, but my mind was on Ava. The fines, the community service, the restraining order, they were justice, sure, but the real victory was Ava feeling safe again. Holloway's punishment wasn't just a fine or a probation term, it was the loss of her power, her pedestal, her ability to intimidate. She'd spent years ruling this neighborhood like a petty dictator. Now she was just a name people hissed over coffee. I sat at the kitchen table that night, the folder of evidence locked away. The fight wasn't over, there'd be follow-ups, therapy, maybe more HOA meetings, but Holloway was finished. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. I thought of her rushing out of the courtroom, her heels traded for flats, her smugness gone. She'd thought she could bully a kid and walk away. She didn't expect the DA, the judge, or a neighborhood finally ready to stand up. As I locked the front door, I glanced at Ava's card from the kid down the street, taped to the fridge. Beacon's cartoon grin stared back, a reminder of what we'd protected. Holloway was gone, her kingdom dismantled. And Ava? She was already planning something called Inclusion Day with Mrs. Patel. That was my girl, turning pain into purpose. The neighborhood hummed with the kind of energy you only get when something broken starts to mend. A month after Holloway's courtroom reckoning, Ava was out front, stringing fairy lights across a picnic table for the first ever Inclusion Day bash. Beacon trotted behind her, his tail wagging like he knew he was the guest of honor. The gate, once Holloway's battleground, now sported a shiny new sign, "Service Animals Welcome." I leaned against the porch railing, a beer in hand, watching Ava laugh with Mrs. Patel over a tray of cupcakes. My kid was back, and the neighborhood felt like home again. Inclusion Day was Ava's idea, born during one of her therapy sessions. "Let's make something good out of it," she'd said, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. Mrs. Patel jumped in, rallying neighbors for potlucks and games. Guzman set up a bounce house, his Mustang parked nearby like a proud dad. Kids ran around with face paint, adults swapped stories, and Beacon got more ear scratches than a rock star. I caught Ava showing a group of kids how Beacon alerts her to seizures, her confidence growing with every nod. The red mark on her shoulder was gone, but the real healing was in her smile. The neighborhood had changed. People waved now, not just at me but at each other. The HOA's new accessibility guidelines were posted online, and Wilson, still nervous but trying, had started monthly open forums. No more clipboard tyrants. No more fines for wheelchair ramps or chalk drawings. Holloway's house was up for sale, her perfect lawn overgrown, her name a punchline. I'd seen her once, packing boxes into a U-Haul, her face pinched like she'd bitten a lemon. She didn't look my way. Good. I'd joined the Accessibility Committee, a volunteer gig that let me help other families navigate service animal laws or ADA complaints. It wasn't my day job, public safety kept me busy, but it felt right. One dad, whose son used a wheelchair, shook my hand after a meeting. "Heard what you did," he said. "Thanks for making this place safer." I shrugged, but Ava's face flashed in my mind. This was for her, and every kid like her. The local paper kept the story alive, running follow-ups about the landmark case. A disability rights group reached out, asking Ava to speak at their next event. She was nervous but said yes, practicing her speech with Beacon sprawled across her lap. "He's my hero," she told me, scratching his ears. I didn't argue. That dog had been her shield, and mine, through the whole mess. Holloway's absence left a vacuum, but the neighborhood filled it with something better. Mrs. Patel started a gardening club, Guzman hosted car wash fundraisers, and even the mechanic from the board meeting got involved, teaching kids how to fix bikes. The gate wasn't a checkpoint anymore, it was just a way in. Ava walked Beacon every evening, her steps sure, her head high. I watched from the window sometimes, my chest tight with pride. She'd faced a bully and come out stronger. Not many 14-year-olds could say that. I thought about Holloway's last stand in court, her fake tears, her flimsy excuses. She'd thought she could out-talk the truth, but Guzman's video, Mrs. Patel's words, and my folder of evidence had buried her. The $5,000 fine, the community service, the restraining order, they were just the start. The real punishment was her fall. She'd ruled this place like a queen, her clipboard a scepter, her rules a cage. Now she was packing her bags, her power gone, her name a warning. Turns out, the real danger at the gate wasn't Beacon, it was a Karen with too much ego and not enough sense. I took a swig of my beer, grinning at the memory of Holloway's face when the judge's gavel fell. Revenge doesn't always feel good, but this did. Not the loud, fist-pumping kind, but the quiet satisfaction of watching a bully lose everything she'd built. Ava was safe, the neighborhood was healing, and Holloway was a ghost. That was enough. At the picnic, Ava called me over to judge a sack race. I groaned but played along, handing out high fives as kids hopped across the finish line. Mrs. Guzman brought me a plate of tamales, her eyes crinkling. "You did good, Riley," she said. I nodded, my throat tight. This wasn't just about me. It was Ava's courage, Beacon's loyalty, and a neighborhood that finally stood up. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange, I sat with Ava on a bench. Beacon sprawled at our feet, chewing a toy someone had tossed him. "You okay, kiddo?" I asked. She leaned against me, her voice soft. "Yeah. It's better now." I ruffled her hair, the same way I had after the board meeting. Better wasn't perfect, but it was a start. If you're reading this, you know what it's like to want justice, to see a bully get what's coming. Holloway thought she could scare my daughter and walk away. She didn't expect a fight, or a neighborhood that found its spine. So here's my call, stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Share this story, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if it was your kid at that gate? Would you have faced the Karen head-on, or played it smart like I did, with evidence and a badge? Ring the bell for more stories where the good guys win, and the bullies pack their bags. Because sometimes, the best revenge is a safer, kinder neighborhood, and watching the tyrant fade into nothing.